Sally, welcome to the Paper Folds.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here. It was such a pleasure to get acquainted in real life in Atlanta, and I'm just in awe of your energy and all you do to promote small makers and stationery. Clearly, I have a lot of questions for you today, but I'd like to start with Anthropologie, which is a dream destination for makers and specifically stationery and sort of boutique gift makers. So, how do you define the Anthropologie magic?
Wow, that's a great question. I think it's really a culmination of the excitement and the newness and sort of the uniqueness of what
Mhm.
Anthro and all the different pieces, whether it's like in apparel land or in home or in gift, there's all these different facets also of
Mhm.
product.
Mhm.
When they all come
Lifestyle.
together, yeah, it really makes this amazing lifestyle shop, to your point. But I think that having all of those different facets and features and opportunities for people to discover while they are in an Anthropologie or even shopping on the website is what really makes the magic and sets it apart in terms of not feeling too one note when you kind of walk into a sea of stores.
Yeah, Anthropologie is so special. I feel like even if I'm out of town and I'm in a mall and I go in that Anthropologie, it will be different from my local Anthropologie, which is
Yeah,
so important because I mean, I don't want to badmouth any chains. If
I know, me too. I'm like, delicately.
I mean, like my daughter, there are certain chains that my daughter always likes to go to. And it's like the one in Florida is exactly like the one in Cleveland, which
Yeah.
is exactly like the one everywhere else. So, it's amazing that you've been able to make every store not feel like a carbon copy of the other stores.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that discovery and magic and just richness and that element of you never know
Yeah.
what you're going to find.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree. And I think obviously there's many teams that go into making that magic happen, but like from the visual teams that do the amazing window displays, and those are all similar, each
Mhm.
season, but each store is totally unique and has their own team creating those behind the
Mhm.
scenes. And then in addition to like different product being filtered into different locations, like they are very unique to each themselves. And I think the brand also does a really good job, even with the type of location that the store ends up in. And all the buildings are all different. And like there's just so many different facets to it, but all coming
Right.
together. Yeah. It's each one you go into, you're like, oh, this is different than the last one I saw.
Totally. Like, is it a freestanding store,
Right.
in a more of like a traditional downtown, or is it in a more of like a modern
Yeah.
walking mall? Just
Yeah.
depending on where it is that element is actually considered, which I feel like a lot of places don't. I mean, they pretty
Mm-hmm.
much just plop down wherever they have that real
Yeah.
estate. So here's the $1 million question. I met
Give
you
it.
in Atlanta. I'm so glad you're ready for it. So, I met you in Atlanta. You had a million things to do. I met you in my unofficial office, which is the Starbucks in the Westin.
Yeah.
Thank you. And,
Of course.
but you have to walk a market. You see a million things. It's very overstimulating. There's a million
Mm-hmm.
different brands, a million different makers, a million different looks. So what grabs your eye out of the gate when you are walking a showroom in Atlanta, attempt
Mm-hmm.
um
Yeah. Yeah. Overstimulating, I think, is a great way to put it. And I think from both sides, obviously I'm on the buying side, but I also feel like it must be quite overstimulating and overwhelming on the brand side as well. And I think that's good for everyone to keep in mind when you're like getting into the show scene. Just know everyone there is overwhelmed. Everyone's tired. Everyone has seen a bajillion things and talked to a bajillion people at any point in
yeah,
the day.
totally. I I feel like there's a lot of like, and it's definitely gotten more intense in the past couple
Mm-hmm.
of years. A lot of like, what is this person doing? What are they doing? Where are they?
Yeah.
Where are they? Are they unfair? Are they here? Who did they
Yeah.
sign with? Oh, they got that rep. That type of
Yes,
thing.
totally. But I think the main thing that sets any booth or even sort of like area of a showroom out to me is if there's a brand that has a very clear vision
Mm-hmm.
and that has then come into play in how their product is developed, how their booth is set up, but you can tell who they are and you can tell what you're getting into before you even have to really start like diving in and sifting through and like looking at different cards or whatever it is. But I think those are the ones that always grab my attention the most. And sometimes it can be, you know, someone that grabs my attention that's not even something that I'm technically looking for, because my buying is very like directed in a certain place. But even walking shows and seeing different types of brands, I'm like, oh, that's like so interesting. But immediately when I glance over, I can tell like who they are, what they're going for, what are they trying to sell me. And it's just very clear. There's no like beating around the bush of like, is this a brand?
Is
for
it?
X,
No,
Y, and
you
Z?
know.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that because, you know, obviously I cover stationery and gifts, but I see a lot and I'm inspired. Like when I walk in Atlanta or in New York, like I'm inspired by categories I don't cover.
It's so fun. Yeah.
And and it's so interesting to see a trend, you know, appear in home and trickle into stationery and so on. And so, you know, it's great to just be out there and get to see everything. You do get so overstimulated, and it takes a while for the dust to settle.
It does.
And I realized too, I did not ask, you know, what are, you know, because clearly you have specific buying areas at Anthropologie. What is your wheelhouse?
Yeah, so mine is also sort of an interesting wheelhouse at Anthro because I am part of like a trend kind of catch-all in a way. So I do buy all the stationery, paper, but I also buy games, I buy pet, I buy a little bit of kids, a little bit of tech.
Fun.
So I'm very like lifestyle within the larger lifestyle. And a lot of that is driven out of the fact that my category has a lot of market in the business. And so a lot of different kind of subcategories that are very market-based fall under my larger category.
Right,
that's how it kind of came to be, but it is sort of a catch-all little segment.
Right. And you had mentioned too that sometimes you might be able to like see a small brand and say, well, I can just put it on. It's not necessarily going to go in your local Anthropologie, but it will be on our website and I can kind of try it out. See how our customers respond. And that tells me a lot about not just this line, but what our customers are looking for and what's going on. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I think there's always everyone's ultimate goal is to get in as many stores as possible. I have a lot of conversations all the time about that. And it's like, but how do I get in your store? I'm like, well, that is an option. That's an option. But there's also a whole other half of the business. And depending on what part of the business, it's maybe even more than half. And I think a lot of people kind of have that misconception, which I understand is very easy to have, because in our minds, you're like, well, if there's hundreds of locations, that has to be more sales than one, you know, direct to consumer channel. But there's a lot of product that we filter onto the site that may never see the store. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. And it is sometimes used for like tests and learns. But then other times used for just like, this is the best channel for this too. But it offers a lot of flexibility in terms of like finding newness and trying it out and seeing how the response does come from customers. And then if it is something that's like, oh, we should put this in the stores, sometimes happens too.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I can imagine that the online Anthropologie customer is slightly different than the one in the store, and it's just a different aspect of your business. There's a lot of overlap, but there's also some you know, distinctions there. I mean, there are a lot of Anthropologie stores, but there's not one close to every home in America.
Right.
So so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. So that being said, can you share a few of your more recent finds from Atlanta? And I'm curious, what made you pick them? What sets them apart? What made them jump out at you?
Yeah, totally. So I connected with a pet brand actually at the Atlanta show, Hot Diggity.
Hot Diggity. That's a good name.
Yes, they make a wide variety of pet toys that are very geared and and like created by, inspired by human brands and things that humans love. And they're adorable. And some of them that I'm talking to the brand about now, about carrying, are ones that are like fashioned after drinks that we all drink, like a sparkling water or one of the Ollie Pop, sodas that everyone's like got in their fridge right now. And they have that for pets as well. And then they had really cute, like little fashion, like instead of a Prada bag, it's a Pada bag for your dog. So very like kind of kitschy, cute. And that's what really stood out to me. I was like, these are hilarious.
Yeah, I'm on their site.
Like,
They're great.
Go. Yeah, like
they're
so
great.
funny.
And very upscale and smart.
Yeah.
With a lot of like, they're stitched.
Very well designed. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I was really happy to see that one in person. And then I met a paper brand called Drawn Goods who
yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah. I haven't like reconnected totally with her yet, but she's on my list. I have some ideas kind of brewing for some future stuff. But she had really, really nice illustrations, really good quality, but also like really great kind of punny phrases on the cards. And they definitely stood out to me as like, these would stand out to people if they were, walking in a store, seeing a sea of different card choices and like go for that one. So she was another great one.
Totally. Yeah. That's Becca. That's Becca Gore. I should just be like,
yeah,
she has a name and it's Becca Gore, and she's like a brilliant young thing.
Yeah, she was amazing.
Her illustrated goods are great. I think she was in my Atlanta report as well. And it's very like, I feel like it's deceptively very like simple product, but like it's so smart and well illustrated. Like I'm on her site and it's a bagel card with a very, very well drawn everything bagel. And it says, you are my everything. And it's very simple, but it's so poignant and smart and polished. So I'm not surprised. Yes.
She was great. So yeah, those were two specific ones. But I mean, as you know, there's so much there that I definitely have tons of like snaps in my phone. And as you said earlier, like it takes a while to come back down from all the trade show crazy. So I'll be spending the next few months sifting back through everything. And I kind of always like am rediscovering after I've gone to a trade show. And then, when I start working on a next season, I'll be like, I have to go back and like look at everything I saw because I can't even remember it at this point. But those two really like stood out to me as
it's
great,
interesting.
Like,
Yeah, it's interesting too with trade shows too. Like I feel like I leave a New York or an Atlanta and I just have like all this like just a big image blur in my mind. And the more time that elapses, like I'll be like, oh yeah, like I'll keep thinking about one range or one thing I saw. You just get so overstimulated.
Yeah.
It's very hard. And I'm sure for you too, like you might see a range and sort of just put it in the back of your head, like this is perfect for spring, or like we're doing a big Christmas push next year. I'll just sort of put this in my hat.
Yeah.
For now. So I'm also curious, like to your mind, what are common mistakes that you see stationery and gift makers making where their brand is missing the mark for whatever reason?
Yeah, I think some of the main ones are the standout and the difference of, there are obviously so many paper brands these days, and especially like I think in greeting card segment of paper even, I know it can be very hard to like stand out and make a card that is different than what someone else is making because there are so many and it's saturated. But I think finding your like unique, whether it's the illustration or the way that you're phrasing it or even the quality or the like print that you're doing and adding special kind of like embellished features, whatever it is, there's lots of different avenues to get there. But just making sure that like you really do feel unique in this kind of sea of other paper people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I know is like really hard.
It's a lot. I feel bad for a small greeting card maker who just opens a fair shop and like sits back to wait for the orders to come in. Like it is very easy to get lost.
Yeah.
on that platform. And I think the stores and the sales reps themselves are a little overwhelmed at keeping everybody
Yeah.
figuring out, like, who everybody is. And also, I'm sure for you, it's also, there's a bit of like, is this a fly by night operation, or is this person like really going to be in it? Like, if I place an order and it sells through, are they, are they going to still be in business
Yeah.
to refill it?
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of consideration. So,
Yes.
to your mind, and I mean, like, that's a huge process to be like, okay, I need to be authentic to myself, but what is myself?
Yeah.
That's the subject of a whole different podcast. My next question was, what should they be focusing on? Rather than that, I want to ask you for your thoughts on something that I talk to my clients about a lot. And I know you're a consultant. You probably talk to your clients about it a lot. Like, tell me what you look at on the back of a card and an envelope. Like, I'm always talking about that really important real estate, actually in both places. So what are your thoughts on the back of a card? Like, if it's just like, what do you want to see?
I will say I like it to still be simple.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when I have like my anthro buyer hat on. I don't want it to feel like it's overwhelming the front of the card or the interior, because those are the more important parts to me for my customer.
Okay.
But I want to know like where it's coming from. I want to know who the brand is, and if there's like a special call out feature. Are you like made in USA, or are you woman owned, or it could be any of those kind of like buzzword features about yourself that make you stand out. And I also think it's really important real estate to like, how do people find you? If they buy a random card in a store and they can't remember like who you are, can they find your website? Can they find a handle? Like, how do they come back to you if they never go to that same store again? And then the envelope, I think, is such a nice place to have additional features that like incorporate more quality into your card.
Yes.
And again, it can be so many different things, but like, is it a different paper material hand feel? Is it a little bit of a thicker envelope versus a thinner envelope? Does it have any printing on the interior of the envelope? Like, is there anything pre-printed kind of even on the front of the envelope that ties back to the card? Like, what little feature can you add that just makes it that much more special? Because I do see a lot of just blank envelopes all the time.
Oh my gosh. That's the first thing I'll tell a line when they come to me. It's like, if you're not, at least consider a craft envelope. Like, and for me, I think a lot of it is, especially if the card's being mailed, like, it's got to look good when it shows up with all that junk mail.
Right. Yeah.
Like, you've got to be,
oh, that's something I want to open. Yeah.
Right. Like, it's got to differentiate itself out of the gate, because that's part of the experience. I love how you're just like, what can be extra? I feel like the Anthropologie brand is like, there's a lot of like discovering, oh, I didn't know that this was lined. I didn't know it had a little bow here. I didn't know. So it makes sense that you're always looking for that little something extra. A lot of card makers have just continued the visuals on the back or made it like a little joke in some way. I really enjoy that trend as well. Like, anything but leaving it just totally blank and putting a copyright on there. Like, please.
Yeah. It's valuable real estate. Use it in some way.
It's so valuable. So when we chatted in Atlanta, we also talked a little bit about the power of in-person and events. These have a real power, especially now as people seek community, especially like in a non-big box format. And you guys have a really nice way of not feeling like a big box. So you mentioned that it can be harder to generate these in a large entity such as Anthropologie. But what kinds of events have you found success with? What kinds of events do you think makers can start thinking about generating with their stockists? And what should independent stores be thinking about to kind of build this community and have these experiences, create these experiences for their clientele?
Yeah, definitely. Yes, I think it's always difficult when a store location is part of a bigger entity, because there are so many things happening behind the scenes and there's such a schedule that's like built out by that internal team, and they obviously are, you know, filtering through so many different options. And as I kind of alluded to earlier, like there's the whole apparel side of a brand like Anthropologie, that it's like we're sharing the events with a lot of things, so it can be really tricky.
Yes.
I think the like most successful events that have come to fruition in my area within Anthropologie have been ones that are more activation based. There was one in the last holiday season that I was really happy to see actually came to life with a brand called Cardi Gang.
Okay.
Which does like DIY kits, and they're
fun,
like knit kits, crocheting kits, and they did an in-person event, and we're like doing some knitting with the kits in person. And I think that like when people can come and there's something for them to do rather than just like I'm gonna show up here and like maybe see someone or
right,
like
drink some lemonade and stand around.
Yeah.
Make and takes
provides an extra layer.
Yeah, make and takes are so fun.
Yeah.
And I think I even mentioned to you, I mean, my daughter's in college now, but I remember taking her to some Mother's Day make and take at our local Anthropologie when she was 7 or 8. And it's funny, she still talks about it. It's really
it's cute. Yeah, I mean, they're so much more memorable. And I also think back to like my pre-anthro days when I worked for a startup retailer in Atlanta that was a one-off, but obviously we had a lot more flexibility because we were not a big entity, and the store was very maker-based. So I also had so many people to pull from that could make these amazing like activations and events, and they were always the biggest hit. We would sometimes kind of try a different sort of event that's more of like a signing or kind of like a meet and greet or something, but like people loved getting, I always remember one that was like a calligraphy like gift tag at the holiday season, and you could like customize your gift tag and then put it on your gift and walk out the door, and people were like, this is amazing, like now I don't have to figure out how to like wrap this in some extravagant way. So I think my advice would be to try to think of how your product formats could be used in some type of interactive way, whether it's sort of like a wrapped in finished product, or if it's just within the product makeup as well. And like, is there a way that you could teach people how you make your products, or something that they could make out of your product to get them involved? And to your point, I think people just like, when you're hands-on, you're like, you're in it, you're remembering, they're probably going to remember your brand so much better too, and like who you are, and then be like, oh yeah, I did an event with this brand at the store, like let me stay in touch with that brand also.
Right.
So activity.
And I think that's so huge because it's just not on a screen. Like it's more important now than it was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, it almost like pre-COVID, I would say it almost came off like a gimmick. Like, oh, you just want to get me in your store to make this place card, and then you're going to try to sell me, this, that, and the other thing. Whereas now it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not doom scrolling. I'm like making something, I'm out and about, I'm in public, I'm interacting with humanity.
Like, it's very
it's very